Today, we're talking about VO2 Max. It's gotten much more popular today than when I started doing them 7 years ago, but it's still crazy that the number one most important health metric is so unknown. And I know, it sounds like just yet another fitness metric, another number to chase. But here's the thing, VO2 Max is different. And to show you why it's different, we're going to go through it from the very basics, and we're not just going to talk about the number. We're going to decode the incredible story that number is trying to tell you about your body. I mean, think about it. Imagine knowing not just how fast you can go or how hard you can push, but understanding the why behind it and being able to use that knowledge to improve. That's the real magic, right? It's one thing to see a score on your watch, but it's a whole other world to understand the machinery inside you that creates that score. So today, we're going to dig into that why, and we're going to make sure it's understandable for everyone. Okay, so first things first, what is this thing? The textbook definition is pretty straightforward. V stands for volume, O2 for oxygen, so VO2 max is the maximum volume of oxygen that your body can actually use during all-out intense exercise. You can think of it as the absolute ceiling of your body's aerobic engine. If your body were an engine, your VO2 max is your fuel burn rate at red line. This idea has been around for a while. We're talking early 1900s for the groundwork, and then in the 1920s, this physiologist, A.V. Hill, came along and basically said, hey, it's all about the heart. Your limit is how much blood your heart can pump, and for a long time, that was the prevailing wisdom. But what's so cool is that now we know it's way more complex than that. Today, we see it as a whole system. Yeah, the heart is a big piece of the puzzle, but your bottleneck, your limiter, could be your lungs or your muscles. But we'll get into the details of each one of those later. For right now, the most important thing I want you to take away is that the VO2 max itself, that final score, is absolutely crucial, but it's still only maybe 20% of the story. It's just the headline. The real gold, the stuff you can actually use to get healthier and perform better, is hidden in the other 80% of the data that almost nobody knows how to interpret. The real value is in the details of how your body gets to that number in the first place. So you might be thinking, okay, but why should I care that much about the details of how to change my VO2? Well, here's why. From a pure health perspective, your VO2 max is the single most powerful thing you can improve. And I'm not exaggerating. Check this out. In a 2016 paper, the American Heart Association states that VO2 max is a better predictor of heart disease and mortality than diabetes, smoking, or cholesterol. This study by Mansanger shows that the people with the lowest VO2 max compared to those with a below average VO2 max had double the risk of death. Compared to above average, it was almost 3 times the risk. We're not even talking about an elite level here, just average. Compared to the elite level, there was a massive 5 times higher risk. That's just an insane return on your investment for your health. Okay, so if we're going to improve it, we need to pop the hood and see how this engine actually works. The best way to understand it is by following the journey of oxygen from the air all the way down to your muscles where it gets used. This whole complicated process can be boiled down to a really elegant idea called the Fick equation. Now don't worry, we're not doing math. It basically just says that your VO2 max is the product of 2 things. That's it. First, you've got delivery. This is all about your heart, how much oxygen-rich blood it can pump out. We call that cardiac output. And second of all, you've got utilization. That's about your muscles. How good are they at pulling that oxygen out of the blood when it arrives and using it? That's called the AV diff. And so we measure how much oxygen your muscles pull out of your blood, and we multiply that by the total amount of blood that's flowing, and that gives us your VO2, the total oxygen use of your body. And your VO2 max is your maximum VO2 when you're working as hard as possible. So a really great way to picture this whole thing is like a figure 8. So follow me here. Step 1, the left side of your heart, the power pump, gets fresh, oxygen-rich blood from your lungs and then pumps it out to your entire body. Step 2, that blood gets to your muscles and they grab that oxygen to make energy. And what's the waste product? Carbon dioxide or CO2. So step 3, now that oxygen-depleted, CO2-filled blood makes its way back to the right side of your heart. And what does it do? It pumps it over to the lungs, which brings us to step 4. Your blood dumps the CO2 into your lungs, you breathe it out, and then you pull in a fresh batch of oxygen. Your lungs pass it into your blood and send it right back to the left side of the heart. The loop is complete. And the key thing to realize, the really key thing, is that a bottleneck anywhere in this chain, anywhere, is what's going to limit you. Each and every step of the chain is necessary for your muscles to work, and thus, when you're at your maximum sprint, the weakest link becomes your limiting factor. Now here's where it gets really cool. Inside of the muscle, you burn two different types of fuel, fat and carbs. And we can actually see what kind of fuel your body is burning second by second. It's like having a real-time fuel gauge, and we call it the RER, or respiratory exchange ratio. All it is a simple ratio. How much carbon dioxide were you breathing out versus how much oxygen were you using, subtracting from the atmosphere? And that ratio tells us everything. If your RER is down around 0.7, you're in total fat burning mode. That's what you see at rest or during easy exercise. And as you pick up the pace, it'll climb up to about 0.85. That's a 50-50 mix of fats and carbs, and it's the true definition of your personal precise zone 2. It's not a percentage of your heart rate based on an average population. And you see that talked about everywhere, but most people don't know that this is the true definition of your precise zone 2. And then when you're going all out and that RER hits 1.0 or even higher, you are in pure sugar burning mode, using fast burning carbs for that top end power. And this ability to switch fuels to go from burning fat to burning carbs and back again has a name. It's called metabolic flexibility. Let me tell you, this is a massive indicator of good health. You want a body that's great at burning fat when the intensity is low. It makes you way more efficient, more resilient, and in fact, the opposite, being metabolically inflexible, being stuck as a sugar burner all the time, that's a huge red flag for your health. It's something we doctors see in really sick patients, and at Duke University Medical Center during the pandemic, it was a huge risk factor for death in the ICU due to COVID. All right, so that's the physiology, that's the theory, but how do we actually measure all this stuff? I used to do it the same way most places do. You just have you jump on a treadmill and you go faster and faster until you can't anymore. But the most advanced VO2 labs do it a little differently, and so I've changed the way I do things to match them. Let's take a look at what really goes on inside the lab. To really see the whole picture, you need a suite of sensors working together. Of course, you've got the mask. That's the classic piece of tech. You see Olympians using it on the treadmills all the time. It's analyzing every single breath you take to figure out your oxygen consumption, your CO2 production, and that fuel gauge, the ratio between them, the RER. Then you have a heart rate strap, which is pretty self-explanatory, tracking how fast your heart is beating. And then the new tech are these things called near sensors. They use near infrared light to see what's happening inside your muscle itself. We put one right here on the working muscle of your thigh to measure oxygen utilization on the spot. And we can sometimes even put one on your forehead on the prefrontal cortex to see how your brain is holding up under all that physical stress. It's an incredible amount of data. So what does the test itself feel like? Well, it's a very specific protocol. It starts with just sitting still for a minute to get a baseline, then a nice easy warm-up for 2 minutes, and then comes the first big part, the ramp test. The intensity on the air bike just slowly, steadily increases, faster and faster, and that allows us to map out your entire metabolic profile from easy to moderate. And after that, you get a short break, and then it's time for the grand finale, a short 1 minute, all-out, maximum effort, balls to the wall, all-out sprint. The whole point of this last piece is to push your body to its absolute breaking point so we can see which system gives out first. It's a rough minute, to be fair, but that's also where we find the real answers. And this is where it all comes together. The hard part is over. You've done the test, and now we have this mountain of data. The big question is, so what? What do we do with it? This is where we translate all that complex data into a personalized health blueprint and an actionable plan just for you. Let's run through a few common scenarios. First up, let's ask the classic question. Is your heart the problem? Is the bottleneck in the delivery side of the equation? Is your heart just not able to pump enough oxygen-rich blood to the muscles that are screaming for it? How would we know? We'd look for a very specific clue in the data. There's a metric called VO2 pulse. And it's an estimate of what we call stroke volume. That is, how much blood your heart pumps with each individual beat. If we see that the O2 pulse number starts to plateau or even dip as you're working, at the same time that the nerve sensor on your muscle is showing that it's still able to pull out more oxygen, Well, that's our smoking gun. The muscles are saying, give me more, but the heart can't deliver. The heart is the limiter. So what's the plan? It has to be targeted. If the heart's pumping is the problem, we need to train the pump. The go-to prescription for that is high-intensity interval training, or HIIT. Think something like the famous Norwegian 4x4s. 4 minutes of hard work, followed by a few minutes of recovery, repeated 4 times. There are other protocols that might be even slightly better that I recommend for my patients, but regardless of the details, this style of workout is specifically designed to make your heart stronger and increase its stroke volume, meaning it can push out more blood with every single beat. Okay, but what if that's not your story? What if your heart is a fantastic pump and the problem is actually downstream? What if the issue is with your muscles? Maybe they're just not that good at using fuel, and oxygen that's being delivered to its doorstep just isn't getting used. Once again, the data gives us the clues. The first clue would be a high RER, that fuel gauge, even when you're just getting started. That tells us your body's burning sugar when it really ought to be burning fat. Classic metabolic inflexibility. And the second clue, the near sensor on your muscle shows it's staying full of oxygen. It's not desaturating. Think about what that means. The oxygen level in the muscle is not going down, and so the delivery truck is showing up with plenty of packages of oxygen, but nobody's coming out to unload them. The muscle's just not able to use the oxygen even though it's being delivered. And if that's the case, the training plan is completely different. High-intensity intervals won't fix this. Instead, we need a two-pronged attack. First, you need to spend more time at zone 2, that easy, conversational pace of movement where your body's forced to get better at burning fat. This improves the efficiency of the mitochondria that you have. Your mitochondria, of course, I'm sure you know, is the power plant of your cell. It's the little tiny bit inside your cell that actually generates energy from burning fuel. And those mitochondria can get more efficient with zone 2 training. Then you combine that with a different type of training called sprint interval training, or SIT. Super short, all-out sprints. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That might sound like HIIT, but it's actually very different. This is a level of work that cannot be sustained for more than a few seconds. This basically creates a low oxygen microenvironment inside the muscle cell, creating such a huge metabolic stress that it signals your body to build brand new additional mitochondria inside the cell and to actually create new blood vessels called capillaries to feed them. Sprints build new mitochondria. Zone 2 makes the mitochondria you have more efficient. Okay, let's talk about one more limiter, and this is the one that gets overlooked all the time, which is crazy because it's something you have direct conscious control over: your breathing. It's possible that the thing holding you back is just the way you breathe. The clue we're looking for here is a pattern of dysfunctional breathing, especially hyperventilation. In the data, it looks like a super high breathing rate, but the volume of each breath is tiny instead of deep, calm, efficient breaths. And that's not just inefficient, it's a real problem. You're not getting enough oxygen in, and you're actually clearing out more carbon dioxide than you should. That has all kinds of effects on your arteries and your brain and your performance physically and mentally, because carbon dioxide levels affect the blood flow to your brain and to your muscles. So the plan here is all about retraining a fundamental habit. It's about consciously practicing slow, deep belly breathing using your diaphragm. And here's the secret: the best time to practice this is when your body is under stress, right after one of those HIIT or sit workouts, when everything is telling you to desperately gasp for air. That's when you have to deliberately take control, slow it down, and breathe deeply. You are literally rewiring your brain to stay calm and efficient when things get tough. And so in the end, that single VO2 max number, yes, it's crucial. Yes, it's the best predictor of mortality and heart disease, but at the end of the day, it really is just the title on the cover of a very personal, very complex story. The real power isn't just in knowing the title, it's in opening the book to read the details about the inner workings of your heart, your muscles, your metabolism, and your breath. It's about understanding the unique story your body is telling.